Good luck in the restroom.
I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join my colleagues and I for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Members present this evening are Council Members Dillon, Gearbaugh, Harmount, Delorco, Hulsh, Mayor Pro Tem Rice, and Mayor Marl. From City staff, we have City Manager Swallow, Deputy Clerk Alexa, Community Development Director Aiken, City Engineer Humphreys, Deputy City Manager Cole. Am I missing any members of staff? I believe that's it. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, we welcome you. There are copies of the agenda on the back table. There was one item added to the agenda today at the request of staff and legal. It will appear as the final item under new business, which is agenda item 2617, resolution confirming the sale of 1080 East Michigan Avenue. Again, copies of the agenda are on the back table along with a sign-in sheet and listening devices if you require them. Noting that one change to the agenda, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So
moved by Gearbaugh. Dillon, would you like to be the second?
Sure.
Very good. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed with public comments. Before I read the spiel here, I do want to note that the Deputy Clerk and City Clerk received a number of written comments in advance of tonight's meeting, in which the individuals wanted their remarks read. I think most, if not all, during this first public comment period. If you did submit a comment, yet you're here in person, please indicate as such when you come to the podium, because we do not want to be reading statements twice. Now we come to the Open Meetings Act. We come now to this portion of the Open Meeting Act in which any person may come forward and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak are requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Before you begin your comment, please clearly state which specific agenda item you are addressing. Please note, council will not answer questions during this initial public comment period. And again, we're going to start with those in the audience. Is there anybody in the audience this evening who has a comment pertaining to a specific agenda item? You may come to the podium and begin when ready. Yep, feel free to adjust.
Brett Pollington, 319 North Ann Arbor Street, and commenting on 25-16, the first mansion purchase. All right. Long before I lived in the city of Saline, I would pass through town on my commute. I would admire the Hallmark movie-esque downtown and daydream about what it would be like to live here. Like I imagine many out-of-towners passing through Saline, in my dream, I would live in the Davenport-Curtiss home. The most beautiful home in Saline, and frankly, one of the most beautiful homes I've ever had the luxury of stepping foot in. I mention all this because I've spent the last 90+ days telling anyone willing to listen to me why I think this purchase is a terrible idea. I don't have opposition to the purchase because I don't love this home, or because I don't understand the home's history, or because I can't see its potential as a community asset. I oppose the purchase because it's not the right time, and I think if council is honest with themselves, they know this too. I believe that this is why no community input was gathered. I've heard many times that community input was avoided because we were in a due diligence period and it didn't make sense to gather public sentiment until council decided if they wanted to purchase the home. Did you ask yourselves if the community wanted you to make this purchase? If I were a betting man, I would guess you did. I would guess that all of you are completely aware of the public sentiment around this issue, and that's exactly why scheduled public comment periods were essentially non-existent. I would guess that most of you saw the separate polls that Tran and I both held on the Saline Post, producing the same result. People overwhelmingly oppose this purchase. We live in a republic, and each of you was elected to represent us as Salinians. But if you purchase this home, can you honestly say you're fulfilling the desires of the people you're supposed to serve? Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate your comment. Additional citizen comment on agenda items. Again, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
it may take me longer to get there, but I'm here. I won't fall in the bus. I'm Bonnie Armbruster, 205 Circle Court, Saline. I'm here about the treatment plant that's in my backyard, just a few feet from my property line. And I'm sick about it. There should have been a fence before you started it, I believe. And I've been told the fence should have come up first before you started digging. My bathroom tile is all cracked. My newly tile that's only 2 years old in my kitchen are cracked and falling down.
Bonnie, excuse me, this public comment is limited to agenda items. Would you like to address any item that's on our agenda this evening? You're welcome to talk about the wastewater treatment plant or any other issues for that matter at the conclusion of our meeting tonight.
Okay, well, my oxygen won't last till the conclusion of the meeting.
Okay, we took note then of your concerns about the wastewater treatment plant. Again, are there any agenda items that you'd like to address this evening?
So when can I talk about the treatment plant and all that stuff?
You're welcome to talk about that at the conclusion of our meeting during the last public comment period.
Unbelievable.
Mayor, may I make a motion to allow Ms. Armbruster to finish her comments due to her accessibility issues?
That motion is in order if there's a second.
Second.
Second, okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. You may continue.
Thank you, everyone. So my bathroom tile is all cracked from the pounding. I've had to often go to bed because it's made me so dizzy, all the pounding. The tile, like I said, in my bathroom, newly tiled, 2 years old, is all broken. Bathroom tile is all broken from all the pounding. And I'd like to know when somebody's gonna pay for that tile and stuff that's broken. Because I'm sorry, I'm having trouble talking with my oxygen pipe. I think we should have done something, put up a fence or something before all that started. And I've been told the fence should have been put up before it all started. I have a clear view from my kitchen patio door. I have a clear view of everybody down at the treatment plant working. Everybody. And I don't understand. I have congestive heart failure. I'm not going to live that long. And I know that. But I really wish that somebody would have paid attention to putting up a fence before they even started. I have no fence, nothing can be planted because there's too much ground movement, I've been told. And I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm just asking for some help, that something's going to get fixed before I die.
We appreciate the comments, Ms. Armbruster, and we will make sure that staff follows up with you. We reached the end of the 3 minutes, so thank you for your comments this evening. We will connect with you later this week.
Well, I can't come to the end of the meeting because my oxygen will run out.
No, we'll reach out. You do not need to stay to the end of the meeting. We'll call, email. We have your contact information.
So 3 minutes are up.
Correct.
That's really sad. That's really sad.
Are there additional citizen comments this evening on agenda items? You may come forward, please.
Hello, I'm Meredith Leaf. I have served on the Historic Districts Council since 2022. I originally worked for the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, which is the historic preservation body of the New York City. My background is I have a master's in science of historic preservation from the University of Pennsylvania. And I come to comment about the Davenport house. It is a common pitfall to make houses house museums. If you have a historic house, you think, oh, let's make this into a museum. But it's just very important to be aware that that can be a common pitfall because they often are not revenue generating. And in fact, the best way to preserve a house is to have somebody live in it. That is because it will have constant HVAC, it will have heating, it will have moisture problems, and it will have a pair of eyes that is actively interested in the well-being of the house, knowing the moment something goes wrong. I also want to mention that in terms of the possibility of relocating the house is significant in part because of the landscape where it is located. It was designed to be set in that landscape, and that is part of its significance, it's part of the context of the house. So the landscape itself is also as important as the house in terms of the impact and the historic importance. I think the best thing for the house would be to get it in a local historic district. It's currently in a national historic district, but national historic districts do not provide any local protections. The only thing with protections is a local historic district, but we do have that potential. I think East Michigan Avenue, as well as some of the surrounding buildings around the Davenport house, have long needed to be put into a historic district to have some protection. And so my suggestion for the preservation of the Davenport house is to get it into a local historic district. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. There are additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening. As soon as you're ready, you can come to the podium. And if you want to form a line, that's fine as well. Again, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
My name is Carolyn Manette. I live on 375 Mills Road, and I am speaking upon the Davenport-Curtiss house. I concur with what Brett has said. I also wanted to add that, in my opinion, I think it is a foolhardy decision. It is fiscally irresponsible, and it is disrespectful of the taxpayers' money and trust in people that we have voted to be fiscally responsible for the city. Why is it foolhardy? We have a saying in our house, when we do things or when we try to spend money, need to do, nice to do, and nuts to do. Need to do is pay the bills, get your groceries in. You have to fix the house up, and you have to dig in your money to put a roof on it. Those are need to do. Nice to do is, boy, it'd be really nice to renovate a room or paint a new room or put in an addition. Nice to do if you've got the money. Nuts to do? Nuts to do is, well, let's just blow everything and put in a swimming pool when you can't really swim that many times here in Michigan. Purchasing the Davenport-Curtiss house is nuts to do, in my opinion. Fiscally irresponsible. Some of you ran on fiscal responsibility, and I voted for you. I expect you to do your job and be fiscally responsible with your taxpayers' money. Disrespectful? You just heard Brett saying that there was a poll taken, and what is the consensus? The consensus is this is not the right time. It's a great idea, but it's not the right time, and you're being disrespectful of the people that voted you in. And again, I wonder, this was mentioned in September. Why didn't you start a committee and a task force then? Why are you waiting now? It's like, let's buy it, and then we'll figure out what to do with it. Is that what you would recommend for your high school student or your college graduate when they gave you an idea? This is how I want to spend my money, Mom? That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Additional citizen comments, please.
Richard Hart, 108 East Henry Street, Saline resident since 1995. I'm speaking to item number 2516 in particular, the motion there, and asking that if this motion is the motion council acts upon. I think it needs a little bit of clarification of the charge to the working group. Specifically, the part about reviewing and evaluating the use options for the property. What use options is that talking about? Is this intended to include a full range of options from full public ownership and city operation to the other extreme of complete private ownership and operation, and or any combination, any variation combination of those two aspects? Or is the working group restricted to looking only at options for the city's use of the property? That did not seem clear to me in reading the motion. My own preference would be for a full range, for the working group to have the ability to look at, evaluate, and recommend from a full range of options. And if that were the case, I would support the purchase of the house. I think it's an extraordinary opportunity for the city to preserve a part of its heritage and its look and feel, but I think that restricting just to city use of the property is too narrow a view. I also think that the 3-year time limit is important to abide by. We're not always, as corporate bodies, good at keeping to time limits. I think the 3-year limit is somewhat reassuring to me with my previously expressed concerns about fiscal responsibility with regard to this. I think the 3-year time limit is a good one. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Additional citizen comments on agenda items. Please, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Laura Factor, 275 South Ann Arbor Street. I'm also City of Curtiss on the Historic District Commission. My comments are also about 25-16. I feel that this home is lovely and worth preserving, but I think when we're thinking about it in the scale of a home museum or an event space, while it's lovely and preserving, it's worth preserving and a beautiful home for downtown Saline, it's not on the scale of a regional draw, like a Frank Lloyd Wright House or the A.P. Dow House in Midland, or even the Dodge Meadowbrook Hall in Rochester Hills. With that being said, that I think limits its options somewhat. And cities in general make poor stewards of this type of real estate. And I agree with Meredith that this house would be better off in private hands as a living building. And I feel that city can best support the goal of preserving the Curtiss Mansion by working with the Historic District Commission to set up those historic districts and continuing to make Saline a great place to live so that that home will become viable for a family to live in. And the city council should continue to focus its efforts on the infrastructure, including ongoing water issues, the downtown, including continuing to support denser housing near the downtown, the green space and parks that have been planned for downtown that are already out there being worked on and talked about, and continuing to support the rec center and the farmers market, which are again great assets for the city and continue to make us be a great place to live, and would encourage people to come live in this community, along with continuing to support our schools. I don't think it makes sense for the city to take over direct management and ownership of an unwieldy historic building. As an owner of an unwieldy historic building, there's so many better things you could be doing with your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Additional comments on agenda items. You will have 3 minutes once you begin.
I did want to clarify that I submitted comments in writing, so I'm going to provide a summary of those comments as well. My name is Rebecca Schneider. I live at 107 West Henry Street. My family's lived in downtown Saline on Henry Street for 22 years. I'm here tonight to urge you to purchase the Davenport-Curtiss mansion. This well-preserved, beautiful Victorian home is an invaluable centerpiece to our town's history and landscape. When unexpected opportunities arise, communities can either embrace possibilities or they can default to saying no. Saying no is always the easiest option. During my time working as the district director for Congressman Joe Schwartz, who represented Saline, I became very familiar with the 7 counties that made up the former 7th congressional district. It was always clear to me which communities said no. You could just feel it and see it in their communities. Those places believed that they couldn't afford anything new, that people wouldn't support bold ideas, and that change was too risky. They totally accepted mediocrity. And Saline is not a mediocre place, and I did not move here to live in a mediocre town. People who say we don't need a museum are completely missing the broader point that the house sits on 6 acres of property in downtown Saline, an extraordinary asset. The property opens the doors to numerous revenue-generating possibilities that could help support the preservation of the house itself. People who say we can't afford this opportunity because the pie isn't big enough to support all of the challenges facing Saline have forgotten about the option of growing the pie. I don't mean just by raising taxes. I mean by fully exploring options. What grant opportunities are available? What other partnerships could help? Vibrant communities are not just focused on the current pie. They are leading the way to a bigger, better tasting, more interesting pie. As a founding board member of Saline Main Street, I've read every marketing study conducted for the last 13 years, and they all say the same thing. They say that people come here because of our historic small town charm. If you decide not to protect our most significant historical asset, how does that affect our prospects of attracting new residents or future businesses? What does it say about our priorities? So I ask this, what is the worst case scenario? The city purchases the home, puts the protections in place so it can't be torn down, attempts to make preservation financially sustainable, and ultimately decides to sell the house at a significant profit. That's a pretty low risk scenario for the taxpayers of Saline. The greatest risk is saying no. Without protections in place, the Davenport-Curtiss mansion is likely to be lost forever. When our grandchildren ask us what happened to that great house, just say yes, please preserve the house.
Thank you for your comments, Rebecca. Additional citizen comments?
Hi, Terry Sabo-Koenig. I'm a resident of downtown Saline. Full disclosure, my husband and I own a historic preservation company, have been in the business for over 30 years. So just a little background about me. And I just want to make a couple of points that maybe is repeating things that have already been said, but I thought it was important to at least say a few things. So as everybody knows, being listed on the National Register of Historic Places provides no real protection for the house and property. It does, however, make the property eligible for federal and state tax credits, grants, and other preservation funding down the road. The property is also part of the Motor Cities National Heritage Area, which tracks heritage tourism. I don't know if that's been talked about a lot here, but in this area, the total economic benefit from local and out-of-town visitors is just over $408 million a year. Some of the sectors that contribute to that total are hotel and lodging, $99.3 million, restaurants, $74.9 million, and museums, historical sites, and parks, $26.1 million in heritage tourism in this area along the heritage route. I also looked up the MDOT traffic counts for this area, and for the road directly in front of the property, the count is 21,604 vehicles per day. There would be very, very few people who travel Michigan Avenue who wouldn't know the property and associate it with Saline. And you cannot say that about the rec center. The house is one of perhaps as few as 11 surviving Second Empire Victorian homes in Michigan. It is also one of absolutely the most impressive and iconic. The potential for future benefit is limited only by letting it pass into uncertain hands. And I urge you to consider buying the property. It does have some fallback clauses which should help, and I think it's a valuable asset in the long run for Saline.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate your comments. Additional citizen comments on agenda items. You'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Thank you. My name is Jim Cameron. I live on Detroit Street, and I encourage you to vote in favor of the Davenport-Curtiss mansion purchase Sounds like the main obstacle here is money, and money is available from outside the city, as was mentioned previously. The Michigan State Historic Preservation Office evaluates, protects, and promotes Michigan historic built environment. They lead by helping local and state agencies identify and seize opportunities to celebrate and rehabilitate historic places that define local communities and make our state uniquely Michigan. SHPO, for the state of Michigan, does have money available. We need to access it. The National Trust for Historic Preservation current work focuses on building sustainable communities through adaptive reuse of historic spaces, preserving and protecting sites of cultural significance, advocating for greater stewardship of historic places on public land, and leading innovation in the management of historic properties. For the fiscal year 2026, Congress recently appropriated over $205 million for this purpose. This is money that we as taxpayers are already committed to paying. We can access that through National Trust for Historic Preservation grants. So with that additional information and exploring other opportunities for financing from the state and federal level, I encourage you to vote in favor of the Davenport-Curtiss mansion purchase. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the comments. Additional citizen comments on any of our agenda items this evening. Again, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Hi, Doug Fry, lifelong Saline resident, along with all my ancestors, 50 years in business in Saline, so I've been around here a little bit. And the situation that I see here is that I'm not saying buy it or not buy it, but I think a little bit more research has got to be done. You start buying a place like that that has asbestos in it, lead paint, all this and that, and you're just buying a money pit. No question about it. They're not, and you're not gonna let people go in a place that's somebody don't approve, and if it has that stuff in it, that's thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix. Not gonna get rid of asbestos, mold, mildew, critters, all that stuff in a short period of time. It's not an easy fix. So, like I said, I think a little bit more research is being done. I'm not sure if I'm coming here and you're gonna pursue to buy it, or I'm coming here to you determine to buy it. But I think if you're come here, you're determined to buy it, I think you ought to do a little more research on it. And if you think, oh, we got a home inspector, that don't mean nothing. If you sign that bottom line that says he's responsible for nothing. And I think a lot of our money should be more spent on preserving what we got. Curtiss Park's the dump, it needs major fix-up. The dam definitely needs work, but it's the biggest asset to our city. The rec center, you put money in it, and you still need to put another couple million in it. Just because you fix one thing, there's still all kinds of stuff wrong there. A lot of the stuff that's wrong with it is the mechanical. So, like I think you have to do a little bit more research on it. I agree with Mr. Cameron. If, funds are available through the state and all that, I would definitely, look at seriously buying it. But to vote tonight on whether you're gonna buy it, that would be, in my mind, ridiculous. And my credentials, I have a lot of credentials on these different things, especially with the mechanicals and stuff for this old house. I own a historical house in Saline, and my understanding is it's a real process. If you either fix it, it will cost you millions, or you can't bulldoze it, or you go through a lot of stuff to try to bulldoze it. So obviously the land is very valuable, there's no question about that. I think also you should pursue the Benson property uptown and look at buying that while you might have a chance. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate the comment. Additional citizen comments on agenda items. Again, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
William Manette, 375 Mills Road, number 2516. Why are we thinking about buying this building? Well, here in the memorandum on page 1, it says, placemaking. Placemaking, however, is a process of creating quality places that people want to live, work, play, and learn in. Somebody's living in it now, but they won't be living in it if it's a municipal building. And work, yeah, there'll be staff working in there. Play, I can't picture that. And learn in, only if we convert it into a museum. We go on and talk about the amendment would be necessary. And this is going to be a 20 to 25 year annual budget commitment. Our kids will be buying this house. Your kids will be buying this house and grandkids. And I'm going to ask the question here. I don't mean to be laundry, but $3 million is the asking price. Did we haggle it all? Did we try to drive the price down? I've read this. The administration approached due diligence with the level of scrutiny appropriate for a major municipal acquisition. At this time, all verbal professional feedback indicates no material deficiencies or deal-stopping concerns. Written reports will follow. Excuse me? There were some written reports in this, but we all know what verbal means, okay? Some of the things that said, moisture wicking evident in basement wall and floor. Water staining in attic, evidence of previous leaks. Roof is in good to fair condition for its age. Now, what does that mean? Really, nothing. Now, the inspector goes on to suggest revisiting the attic after a heavy rain to make sure. So they're not convinced either, okay? Now, it was compared to Ann Arbor's Cobblestone Farm and Monroe's Sawyer House and the Homestead. I never heard of either of these. I've lived in Saline for 21 years. I've been traveling to Ann Arbor for 27. And then go on to talk about the Adrian Fee House. Okay, I have driven by the Fee Park. But pages 50 and 51 of this tell us that none of these three nearby venues is paying for itself. Income only pays for day-to-day operations. Any large-scale repairs or upgrades are paid for by the city and taxpayers. And remember, a venue for weddings, parties, etc. requires a paid promotional staff to get the word out so it can be rented, which is another expense. Now, will the price of rental be reasonable for the ordinary people of Saline to hold their events there? Don't know. My vote is that we let the free market work here. Decline to buy the house. The existing owners will take the best offer. Something will be done with it, which will contribute to the city's tax base. Remember, the existing owners also have a vested interest and will not allow the building to be misused. Sometimes you have to say no to the good so you can say yes to the best. In my opinion, the best for Saline is affordable housing, clean water, functioning sewage treatment plant, and dam removal or repair. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening.
My name is Dan Hart. I live at 325 North Ann Arbor. I don't know if there's going to be a discussion later or if it's just going to be a vote on the mansion, commenting on the mansion. There's just a couple of items that I don't think came up during the previous conversations, at least I've either read or listened to, in regards to the due diligence on the mansion. I think that there has been a decent assessment of the mansion's qualities and structural integrity and stuff. But the couple of items that I think that I was hoping would be addressed would be whether the tax assessor did a estimate of what property taxes would be received on a $3 million sale of a house in downtown Saline. I don't think we had a sale of a house of that nature in the city of Saline, so it would be nice to know what type of tax revenue we could potentially be looking at on in the event that that sale were to go through to the public at that amount. And then the other thing is just a larger discussion item being what legitimate issues could arise or what concerns the city has if they were to not procure this house. If the city didn't purchase this house, I mean, I've heard speculation of someone could come in and knock the house down and build a bunch of condos to somebody could, buy it and make it a nice house and everywhere in between. And I think that discussion could be a little bit more in depth. I mean, I don't know a lot about zoning and kind of of the logistics with that, but just a curiosity of whether the city has protections that are in place to where if the purchase were not to go through, what whether there are some items that could protect that house, even if it isn't an asset by the city. So just some thoughts. I wanted to just put that out there. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate those thoughts. Additional citizen comments on agenda items.
Jonathan Fay, North Ann Arbor Street. Live in the historic district. We moved to Saline because we love the historic district. Like the Davenport house, which is what I want to talk about. Very much in favor of preserving and protecting the property. But I think that there's not been enough consultation on this matter with the city in general. I think the purpose of purchasing the property, as it's being proposed, is to preserve the landmark and protect that. Again, I fully support that. In the documentation, and I would say I've only really looked into this in the last week or so, when I've heard this is happening. This is the only time I've had to prepare and look at any of this stuff. And I've watched back the videos of this being presented. And I would say that it seemed like when you present this on the 2nd of September, you said something along the lines of that this was like a first step. But I don't think that we've had enough of the other steps in between to really explain to the city what is going on there. In the packet that you did put out last week, there's a statement in there that says that the core governing principle is that well-run cities do not borrow before they know what they are building. And in this case, you guys still don't know, I think, what we're really going to do with the Davenport house. There was discussion, I saw a video with Dean Gerbash discussing with this guy outside the front of the Davenport house back in August, September time. You were talking about parties and such. It's a great idea. I would say that the noise, and even in that video, you're struggling to be heard over the sound of the traffic and the emergency vehicles going by. I don't know that that's really the best location for doing outside parties and that kind of good stuff, but maybe that's for, I don't know, for more consideration. But I would say that if we're going to do that kind of thing, have public events in that area, in that 40 zone that is there on Michigan Avenue, we should be lobbying for that to be toned down to a 30 all the way through Michigan Avenue. But anyway, I think that the city itself shouldn't really be seeking to take on these additional assets as profit centers. You're discussing how we're going to use this asset and it's going to pay for itself. And we've heard before, and even in your own documentation, it shows that really it's not going to be that. So if you're going to make a case that we should be buying this property to preserve it as a historical asset, you should do that on its own merits. And consider that it is going to be a tax. It's going to be a burden on the city to pay for it going forward. I also have concern because the city does actually, and I live in the historic district again, believe in it, but this city actually has a track record, as far as I'm concerned, of allowing historic buildings to be raised in order for condos to be built. And I would say like North Maple, Monroe Street, and now Waterworks Road, historic buildings have been raised to build condos. So I am concerned we want to keep that property as one big property. And I would like to follow up on basically Dan stole my thunder a little bit, is what are the other options? This dichotomy really that if we don't buy the property, we're going to lose it, it's going to be raised, we're not going to be able to protect it. I think there must be other things that we can do to ensure its protection.
Very good. Appreciate your comments. Any additional comments from those in the audience this evening? Then we're going to proceed to our written comments. Ken, you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Hi, my name is Karen Peters. I live on 396 Saline River Drive. I also want to speak on the topic of the Curtiss Davenport mansion. I had a lot of things I was going to say, but since a lot of people spoke before me, I won't repeat. But one thing I wanted to tag on to that Will Manette said about, did we haggle about the price? I don't know if you did or didn't, but I looked it up on Zillow, and the estimate on Zillow is 1.4 million. So I wonder, why are we offering to pay $3 million for something that's only assessed to be worth 1.4 million? The other thing I have an issue with is not knowing what you're going to use it for. People have said maybe a wedding venue. I can't imagine what the cost would be to install a commercial kitchen in that house to make it usable for a wedding. Plus, do we really want to be competing with Wellers? I mean, that's an important historical asset. I wish we could muster up the same enthusiasm for preserving and supporting Wellers and the dam that was built by Henry Ford as we are for saving the Davenport-Curtiss mansion. Another thing I wanted to comment on the tax, the property taxes that we would lose if the city bought it. It was said in the article in the Saline Post that right now it would cost the city about $17,000 a year. I agree with what the previous gentleman said. If that sold for $3 million, the tax was going to be way greater than $17,000. So that's not really an accurate number to say that. The tax loss would be much greater than that. The other thing I did think of, I'm not saying I'm in support of making this purchase because I don't think it's fiscally responsible, but if you could convince me that it would be self-sustaining and revenue generating to turn it into something like Carytown Concert House that's in downtown Ann Arbor, I would love the idea of having entertainment acts in that house. But you would have to prove to me that it's self-sustaining and that the city, this would not become another financial liability like the rec center. Yeah. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional comments from those in the audience this evening? One last opportunity. Deputy Clerk-elect, it is all you. I will time you. How many comments do we have here this evening?
18.
18. Okay, you may begin when ready.
I do want to voice my opinion, and I think that it would be fiscally irresponsible for the City Council to vote for the City of Saline to purchase the Curtiss Mansion. We cannot even keep the rec center running smoothly. How can we purchase something that would need major renovations and maintenance to keep it up? I do not want to see my tax dollars spent on purchasing the Curtiss Mansion. An individual purchased the smaller yet still large historical home behind the Curtiss Mansion, and that family is enjoying the home and keeping it up. I walk our dog by there every day. There may be a family who has the resources to purchase and maintain the Curtiss Mansion as a residence, which would be much better idea. Please let my opinion be known on Monday's meeting. Kathy Curran at 271 Old Creek Drive.
Very good. We appreciate that comment. You may proceed to the next.
I'm writing to indicate my support for the city's proposed purchase of the Davenport Mansion, the possibility of losing this essential piece of Saline's history, which is also one of the city's landmarks. The city's ownership could lead to the downtown features we've all been hoping for. The purchase price and taxes are modest compared to the possible return on investment. Stephanie Custer.
Okay, very good. Proceed to the third, please.
Please vote no on the city purchase of the 150-year-old Davenport-Curtiss Mansion. The city of Saline does not have the funds to maintain this property, including replacement of outdated plumbing, lead, galvanized pipes, knob and tube wiring, foundation issues, asbestos, termites, and a failing roof that will require major extensive system replacement, structural repairs not obvious from curb appeal, except significant costs for updating critical components like electricity, plumbing, especially sewer lines to the street, HVAC, plus potential hazardous materials like asbestos, lead paint, and dealing with complex, expensive to replace original features, turning charm into costly surprises. This is all in addition to grounds maintenance and approximately 9-acre piece of property, including lawn mowing, tree maintenance, and gardens upkeep. James Gatson at 609 Palmbrook Drive.
Appreciate his comments. Would you like to proceed to the fourth?
I do not favor the Davenport-Curtiss property purchase and urge you to vote no. I've read the City Council work meeting agenda for January 5th of 2026. The document is thorough and does a good job at supporting and limiting itself to outlining the benefits of the acquisition. It details some areas of concern like the cracking plaster, open voids, and the likely presence of lead, paint, and asbestos. Unfortunately, it never addresses the cost to redeem them. Overall, I thought the report was a bit optimistic on its income potential and very light on the cost of ownership. But what good sales pitch isn't it? I was very surprised that there was no discussion on the tax revenue the property would generate if not purchased by the city. I would imagine that it would be a significant amount. By eliminating this and limiting the discussion of the city's liability to only the bond payback, it grossly understates the true cost of the purchase. Then there are recommendations. One is to use the property as a park. Currently, the city has dozens of parks. The DPW does an admirable job at keeping the grounds, repairing these things that need to be fixed. Unfortunately, in the last decade, the city has done little to the facilities to improve the ROMP and play structures. The next to nothing has been done to address issues of accessibility. I'm not against having a 13th park, but I'd much rather the park use its limited funds to update and upgrade the ones we already have. Another idea is to use the grounds for different functions, like an art festivals. Again, it's a worthwhile option. However, given the property's location along their busiest street and it lacks the available parking, I would think one of our existing parks would be safer and more suitable. Lastly, as a member of the most recent Rec Center Task Force, I had an inside look at how important financial decisions are made. After the decisions of deliberation, my biggest takeaway was the set aside from things that provide or directly support essential services. It is not in the city's best interest to own or invest in anything that can't pay for itself through its income or millage. If that's the truth, hasn't changed, and we can take an honest look at all the numbers. I don't see how we can justify the Davenport purchase. As I've already noted, if we're ready to part with a few $1 million, it makes much more sense to mend and improve those things we already own before we add any new liabilities. Please vote no. Tim Dellett.
Thank you. Appreciate that comment. Please proceed with the next comment, Deputy Clerk Alexa.
Thank you for your thoughtful leadership and in considering the potential acquisition of the Davenport-Curtiss mansion at 300 East Michigan Ave. I write in support of the opportunity and appreciate the care for which the city is evaluating its long-term value. As a community, we are guided by the city's strategic plan, a roadmap shaped by the residents and leaders that outline Saline's missions to bring people together, provide sustainable public services, and evaluate our city for today and tomorrow. This plan prioritizes effectively asset management, purposeful planning, and smart growth, and supporting a viable community along other goals. The Davenport-Curtiss mansion, built in 1875, is a distinguished Second Empire archaeology style and listed in the National Registry of Historical Places. Is one of the Saline's most significant historical assets. Its preservation and thoughtful activation can advance several strategic priorities all at once. This strategic priority directs the city to proactively manage community assets to ensure long-term sustainability. The mansion is more than a building. It is an irreplaceable culture and architectural asset that deserves stewardship rather than leaving its fate to the open market. Proactively securing its own aligns with this priority and prevents unnecessary risk and inappropriate redevelopment. The strategic plan calls for growth that aligns with community needs and vision. By acquiring the Davenport-Curtiss mansion, the city gains the time and control to thoughtfully explore adaptive reuse and serves their residents, supports downtown, and preserves the historic character that makes Saline unique. A viable community is one where residents feel connected, proud, and engaged. Programming at the mansion can be for the community, connection, residents, and for all ages into deeper engagement with local history, culture, and civil life. Allowing this opportunity to pass without city involvement would be a risk to our community values. We cannot know who might purchase this property on the open market. Rather, a future owner will prioritize preservation, let alone community benefit. Worst case, it could sit vacant and fall into despair. The best case might be a private owner maintaining it quietly, but ownership by the city ensures community alliance and aligns with the strategic plan, long-term vision for smart, sustainable stewardship of our shared spaces. In contrast to past opportunities that have been discussed, like
You have to end it there, Deputy Clerk-elect. So what was the name on that?
Mary Dutling.
Okay, very good. Appreciate Mary's comment. You may proceed with the next comment.
My name is Jill Doran. I'm a long life resident of Saline, a local business owner, and the board president of the Saline Main Street, and want to voice my support for the city purchasing the Davenport-Curtiss mansion. This is truly a once-in-a-generation opportunity to invest in both the history and future of the city. I recently had the opportunity to tour the home, and I was blown away by how beautifully it had been maintained, and the city will still, by the history that still lives there through its original furnishing and details. This is not something that can be replaced once it's lost. Is this a big investment? Yes, but some investments require vision. Preserving this home ensures that it is protected for public benefit rather than lost forever to private development. Once this happened, there's no way to get it back. This property also presents real opportunities for community access, education, tourism, and sustained financial. With thoughtful stewardship, it could offer public tours, school programming, community events, and experience that draw visitors by supporting their downtown and local businesses. For both the community and economic development perspective, I believe this property will not lose value, historic assets like the strength of the city's identity, and help preserve the unique character that helps Saline be special. I grew up here and I'm proud to call Saline home. Decisions like these are paramount to preserving the charm and sense of place to define our community for future generations. I urge you to step forward.
Appreciate that comment. That was from Jill Durnan. You may proceed with the next comment, Deputy Clerk-elect.
Please vote no on the Curtiss Mansion purchase. Carolyn Fitzgerald.
Thank you. Please.
As 20-year residents of Saline, we are property owners and taxpayers. We would like to register our opposition to the purchase of the Curtiss Mansion. The city of Saline has multiple expenditures that are in the multi-million billion-dollar range. These include the wastewater treatment plant refurbishing, the Saline Rec Department, as well as Mill Pond Dam. Residents already pay extremely high taxes for the benefit of living in Saline. Taking on additional multi-million-dollar project with no clear benefit to residents is grossly negligent. Let's take care of what we currently have on the books and not further increase the tax burden. We ask that our elected leadership refrain from approving this purchase. David and Cheryl Irvan.
Thank you. Please proceed.
The Curtiss Mansion is a treasure to Saline, so is the rec center and the parks treasures in Saline. The city has difficulty addressing the issues at the rec center and parks. I find it difficult to agree to the purchase of the Curtiss Mansion if the city cannot address these current issues. The mansion will cost thousands of dollars to maintain, while we cannot even maintain our current structures. Therefore, I urge City Council to vote no on the purchase of Curtiss Mansion. Bob Grossham.
Very good. Thank Bob for his comment. Please.
It is a pivotal moment in Saline's history regarding the future of 300 East Michigan Ave. The house and grounds are a combined historic and natural monument to the city. It would be very risky leaving its future to enhance or assume that someone would purchase the property and maintain its integrity. The city's planning commission does not adequately address the changes and controls necessary to ensure proper urban planning and possible development of the situation. Future planning and/or development should be carefully executed, and the best and most effective approach to do so is to have the control of the property in conjunction with thoughtful and professional planning. This is valuable within the heart of the city. It is its own collateral, but its true value being forward will be how we plan and shape its future. Eric Grossman.
Good. Please proceed with the next comment.
Please vote no on the Curtiss Mansion purchase. We are disgusted by the lack of responsibility by the city's financials and the consideration of this abomination. Let's take care of the infrastructure we have and show that we are able to maintain that before we take on more. The poor maintenance on the wastewater treatment facility and things such as the city entrance signs say enough. We don't have the money to take on projects of this type. Please be responsible with our tax dollars. You are seriously talking about closing the rec center because of its cost, and you would consider taking on a project like this. Come on. Joseph and Mary Ellen Hudeman.
We appreciate their comments. You may proceed.
I have always enjoyed having the Curtiss home as a city landmark. I don't feel purchasing is a smart expense to the taxpayers, as if we have yet to redeem the issues of the wastewater treatment plant, the Mill Pond Dam, and the rec center money pit. The initial purchase itself is not the end of the expense. The land and buildings must be carefully maintained over the years. It has been my experience that the city is not very consistent with maintaining its properties. I don't feel this taxpayer burden the city should be considering. Donna Johnston.
We thank Donna for her comment. Very good. Please proceed with the next comment.
I was asked, I have a background in museum and art history with a degree from the University of Michigan. I also belong to a family that works for a large airline. Because of this, I have been to many homes around the world, including the Claude Monet's house in France, Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam, Netherlands, the Roman Pompeii in Italy, the Frank Lloyd Wright House in Buffalo, New York, the Claude yes, in France. The Davenport-Curtiss house in Saline should be purchased by the city. This house ranks with all of those famous places. Hopefully you will find a way to make this happen. Robert Lane.
Very good. We thank Bob for his comment. Please proceed.
While the Curtiss Mansion is an amazing historical building in Saline, I do not think this makes sense for the city to become financially entangled in this property. I think it makes more sense for the current owner to stipulate how the property is used when they sell it. I think the city should include its historical district. This would ensure that it can't be changed easily. Overall, I want to see the property maintained just through private ownership. You can look at a lot of cities in Michigan like Marshall that have historical buildings and private owners continue to maintain them. Allison Holding.
Yeah. Thank Allison for her comment.
Just a few more.
Yeah, please proceed.
My name is Scott Rentschler, a lifelong and current resident of the city of Saline. I would like to express my support for the city of Saline to purchase the Davenport house and property. History is important to us. Our historic district protects our culture, agriculture, architectural, and historic assets. The Davenport house, along with the depot and Wellers, are, in my opinion, the three most important historical sites Saline to protect. This past Saturday, the Saline Historical Society Board had a chance to tour the house, and at our brief meeting after the tour, we were all in favor of the purchase to protect this most historical treasure. I ask that you consider purchasing this property so that at the very least, it can be properly protected so the residents and visitors alike can enjoy this incredible historic homes and grounds.
I appreciate that comment from Scott. Please proceed with the additional comments.
I've lived in downtown Saline for 10 years and also we're business owners in the city. We are writing here today because we are being handed a once-in-a-lifetime generation decision, whether we step up to protect the Davenport-Curtiss mansion or allow it to slip away. This isn't just an old house, it's a landmark. It's 6 acres of land in the center of our city. It's a symbol of whether Saline sees its history or its burden, or as an opportunity. Jeff and I have watched communities faced with moments like this. Some choose imagination, others choose comfort. Comfort usually sounds like it's too expensive or it's too risky, or now it isn't the time. Comfort is saying no. This decision also isn't about whether Saline needs another museum. It's about what we do for the extraordinary downtown property. That land can host events, partnerships, education, celebrations, uses that can support preservation rather than drain resources. History and sustainability can coexist. Every study ever done in Saline says the same thing. People are drawn here because it feels authentic, because it has character, because it doesn't look like everywhere else. If you walk away from the most significant historic property, we weaken the very thing that makes Saline attractive. Let's talk honestly about risk. The downside of buying and protecting this property is limited. The upside is enormous. The true risk is doing nothing and watching this place be altered or lost forever. Years from now, someone will ask what stood at the center of Saline and why it's gone. We want us to be able to say that we tried, that we saw the value, the possibility, the responsibility. We have a rare chance to act in our own terms and intention and vision. Jeff and I are ready to help do the work. We hope you're ready to say yes. Jeff and Kate Spence.
Okay. We thank the Spences for their comment. Any additional comments?
2 more.
2 more. Please proceed.
The Curtiss mansion should not become a financial burden on Saline taxpayers. Instead, it should be sold to a private buyer who will assume full responsibility for the cost and ownership and maintenance. This approach would allow us to continue enjoying its beauty as well as we walk or drive by, just as we always have. Moreover, if the city purchased the property, we would forfeit many tens of thousands of dollars in annual property tax revenue, and the property owner would generate. Once again, I'm hopeful that the city leaders prioritize the true needs of our community over the desires of a few on council. At the very least, the decision of this magnitude, including millions of public funds, deserves to be put directly to a vote to the citizens. Chris Bodman.
Thank Chris for his comment. Final comment.
All right. As the resident of the city of Saline, I'm requesting that you please vote no for the purchase of the Curtiss mansion. The residents of the city do not need any additional purchases made, given that they are going to continue to increase our taxes. There is no way this purchase will do enough to benefit the residents to justify even 1 penny increase in our taxes. In addition, please stop subsidizing the city rec center with the taxpayer dollars. If this business cannot sustain itself, it needs to be shuttered like any other business that cannot succeed financially. City of Saline residents are subsidizing the rec center, and many non-city residents are benefiting from that. Stop giving it our money. We have already seen our city services decline, snow removal in particular, while taxes, water, and sewer bills increasing exponentially over a year, far outpacing our salaries. Jeff Wise.
Okay. And we are sure, Deputy Clerk Alexa, that is all the comments.
Yes, there is one letter from the Eastern University that was handed out.
Okay, yeah, that's a longer document. I believe it is dated January the 7th, 2026. It's signed by Nancy Villa-Burke, Professor of Preservation Studies and Director of Graduate Program in Preservation Studies, at Eastern Michigan University, and I believe that's expressing support for the acquisition. It's a nice eclectic mix of comments. We appreciate everyone sharing their opinions, and we will deal with that momentarily. For the public's benefit, I wasn't planning to ask this question, but I'm going to. I think it's best directed at the Community Development Director. However, if the Deputy City Clerk or the Deputy City Manager, or City Manager would like to address it, that would be fine as well. A number of comments and questions were raised regarding the initial due diligence on the property, evaluating the structure, the outbuildings. Can you comment on that? And more importantly, if people were to if people wanted to take a look at the documents, where they would find those?
Yeah, the inspections that were done by our inspectors were just on the surface, obviously. As I mentioned last week, they didn't go into the walls and do things like that. They do mention that the HVAC system is well maintained. I think it's 10 to 15 years old. It's been serviced every year. It's documented right on the unit. New water heater. There's a generator. Electrical system is updated. Then we had structural engineers come in, went through all the houses. They did, excuse me, as was mentioned, they did note that there's staining in the boards up in the attic from leaks. That roof was replaced 15 years ago. That's only the second roof that's been on the structure. It's all slate. The owner has been very, very diligent about having any leaks addressed and taken care of. And the environmentals, everything came back clean. That was, I think, a 638-page document. And they did a very in-depth historic look at the entire property. I mean, there was nothing there prior to this house being built 150 years ago. No threat of anything, contamination in the grounds. Based on the age of the site, yeah, there might be some material in there that contains asbestos. They recommended doing some further tests if any work needs to be done in there, have it abated or avoided altogether. And same with the lead paint. I mean, that's just based on anything, what is it, 1970, 72 or so, probably have lead paint in it. And there's a fair chance that it is.
And City Manager, if individuals within the community wanted to take a look at those documents, all that material is available on Minutes on Demand, correct?
Yeah, several of the documents were provided, particularly for the work session, January 5th. So we do have that online, and we can certainly, if there's more detailed reports like the environmental phase 1 review, those can be made available as well. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. We're going to proceed to the consent agenda. Again, we'll get to the issue of the Davenport-Curtiss home momentarily. Again, we appreciate those who attended this evening and those who submitted comments. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion.
I would like to remove item 26-11.
Okay. Would you like then to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Rice, would you be amenable to seconding that?
Sure.
Okay. So a motion on the floor, moved by Dillon, seconded by Rice, to approve the consent agenda as amended, noting the subtraction of agenda item 26-11. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We come now to agenda item 26-11, appointment of Tracy, Shelton, Marion to TIFA and EDC boards. This will be a motion to appoint Tracy, Shelton, Marion to the TIFA and EDC boards.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Dillon to acknowledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. Councilmember Dillon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My question was that we do have a city ethics policy that has a nepotism issue. Ms. Marion is the spouse of a city employee, and I just wanted clarification that because we are deviating from our policy, and just making sure that everyone is aware of that. And if we are going to deviate, then we should probably be looking at changing the policy.
If you want to comment, I'm not aware that we're deviating from the policy, but go ahead.
Yeah, the policy I'm aware of that was discussed prior to the meeting was relative to council members' immediate family. Obviously, this is a city employee, so slight difference, but again, the policy I was aware of was relative to council members.
Right, and in my opinion, they should just sort of mirror. I mean, if you're going to have rules for council, they should be the same for staff.
Any additional comments? Mr. Gearbaugh?
I've been consistent on this with my nepotism thing. I mean, we've had issues where, people have hired their sisters or hired other things where staff have hired for temp positions and things that we should be consistent in our policy, even with our committees and such. The concern gets to be, basically, we have issues related to those type of things. So further, perhaps this is a discussion that we need to talk. If we believe that council shouldn't have their spouses on committees, I'm not sure where the line should be crossed where we wouldn't have it be with employees. I mean, a similar type of thing I think happened with even the school boards in terms of how they were employed, can't be employed by one entity and then also serve as a member of the other. I'm just saying that this probably is a discussion that we should have a little more merit to it.
I don't have any objection to having additional discussion, and I think as I made mention in an email today that this is an item that the policy committee should address if the existing standards ought to be amended or modified. I don't see any inherent conflict or problem with appointing a spouse of a staff member to our economic development boards. I can't imagine what the conflict or issue would be. I've known Tracy, Shelton, Colson, Marion for a number of years, lifelong Salinian. I interviewed for her for this position. She's deeply passionate about our community. I think she'll be an excellent addition to our board. So during the subsequent motion, I will be voting an affirmative yes to confirm the appointment. If there's nothing further, we'll proceed to vote on the motion. Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Gearboss, simply to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay.
To acknowledge receipt?
Oh, to acknowledge, pardon me, yes, to,
Yes, yay? Okay. Is there a motion now to appoint?
Move to appoint.
Moved by Rice to appoint. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is that Del Orco?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. Motion carries 5-2. Thank you. We move on to new business item 26-13, resolution instituting a temporary moratorium on approval of data centers in the city of Saline. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt and to adopt or not to adopt resolution number 2613, instituting a temporary moratorium on the approval of data centers in the city of Saline, Michigan for a period commencing on the date of the resolution and terminating 365 days from the date of the resolution.
Motion to approve and adopt.
It's actually going to be a motion. I'm looking for a motion to acknowledge and to adopt. Are you amenable to making that motion? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. City Manager, actually, Community Development Director Aiken, would you like to begin?
Yeah, just with the influx of data centers that have been popping up throughout the state, we felt it's best to put a moratorium on this since we don't have anything in the zoning ordinance directly related to these types of uses. I have spoke with a couple of other communities, both downriver, that are seeking to do the same thing. I believe just late, I think it was last Thursday, Allen Park was entertaining a proposal for a data center there. They do have some sizable lots available in their industrial park, but nothing near what is being done over in Saline Township. So I'm not sure how they're going about this. City of Taylor, I spoke with them. They're considering moratorium as well. So I think for the near future, this will allow us some time to look into it, figure out what would be best, and if we were approached with this type of use within the city.
Very good. I think you and I actually discussed this matter back in October and November, and I'm strongly in favor of moving forward this evening. You're indeed correct, or the inference you made is correct, which is we don't have ample available space currently in the city for a large data center, unless, of course, there was a developer who was able to cobble together several parcels, which I think would be unlikely at best. However, I would note for council and for the public's benefit, we were receiving calls last year in 2025 from Fortune 100 companies who were interested in developing large parcels directly adjacent to the city of Saline and then seeking annexation and the use of our utilities. So I think this approach is pragmatic and prudent to evaluate what kind of additional regulatory framework we need to put in place to protect our existing residents and business owners. I'm not against data centers in their totality, but I do think putting this moratorium in place makes sense for the next year. If I'm not mistaken, was this matter discussed at the December Policy Committee of City Council?
It was mentioned. There wasn't any in-depth discussion about it.
And I would note too, because I think I shared this with you and the city manager and maybe even the deputy city manager, Pittsfield Charter Township is either currently considering a similar policy or it's been adopted. And I was just notified last week that the city of Northville also codified a very similar policy at their most recent city council meeting. Are there questions for city staff? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, looking at this and the similar thing that happened in Saline Township, the defense of this, we have no concerns about the ability to defend this, not running into some kind of expensive legal thing if somebody decides to push back?
With a moratorium?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Mr. Delorco, and then I'll jump to Ms. Dillon.
Yeah, given what Saline Township has experienced, I think this is a wise move moving forward to protect ourselves from overdevelopment in data centers. But I also think it gives us an opportunity to look more into the support systems and the support businesses around the data center, the battery storage facilities, construction, and the alternative sources of energy, windmill technologies, solar panels. All of that could generate potential interest in business industrial parks in the Saline community, and we might want to be mindful of having an eye on how those businesses are going to impact our community.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you. Was this reviewed by the city's attorney?
No, it was not. The moratorium was not. This was drafted from an existing moratorium. So the language that is in there is consistent with other moratoriums that I've read.
And I guess Mr. Gearba has already asked about it being defendable. The other question I have is, are data centers known by any other names? By saying data center, is that a generic term that is all-encompassing? Or are there other avenues in which people can sneak through?
The last, we received a phone call from somebody last week. It was a storage was in some sort of, I think they're referring to the one in Saline Township, and it was storage was, I think, might have just been data storage or something of that nature. I don't know how it went through. I could easily see them considering these offices or R&D. But
I guess that's my concern right now. If you know, if we can amend this to be anything just similar in concept. And then just to understand, and it may just be that I'm not reading this correctly, there's a whereas clause, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the 8th whereas clause, which is the city council has determined that it may be necessary to expedite the pursuit of certain development or business opportunities and may be appropriate to provide mechanism allowing a petition to the city council for an exception to the deferral contained in this resolution. So are you saying that we can actually, by a vote of this body, override our moratorium?
by deferral, yeah.
I would concur with that statement. I mean, obviously, this is a council action, it can be overturned by a council action. So at any point in time, that is empowered by council, and I think it is appropriate. For example, if we had development that was acceptable, that we wanted to move forward, that we could bring it forward to council, but it would take action to override this.
There's also nothing that would mitigate at any time council from offering a motion to lift the moratorium.
Or rescind or lift it.
Yeah, prior to the 365 days.
We have everything passed and everything.
So is, right, and so in the 365-day time frame, are we looking at ordinances coming forward? Is there something, do we have a time frame? Do we have an idea of what that's going to look like moving forward?
Moving forward, no, not yet. It's basically going to come down to, the amount of land that is necessary, setbacks, building height, things like that. Your standard zoning requirements. I'm not up to speed with how the one in Saline Township is going to function. I don't know if there's a certain level of noise that is going to emanate from there. So there's all those things that have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, the goal is to bring an ordinance language forward within that 365-day or 1-year time frame. In theory, it could also be extended. But you have to show that you've made progress towards, adopting regulations or adopting zoning ordinance amendments within that time frame. So the goal would be to, yes, bring an ordinance forward within the 1-year time frame.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Any discussion on the motion? We have a motion on the floor moved by Harmount, seconded by Rice to acknowledge and to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 26-14, Washtenaw County Emergency Communication Consortium Agreement Renewal. This will be a motion to acknowledge the receipt and to approve or not to approve a 2-year agreement with Washtenaw County Project Oversight Committee to manage and support the Washtenaw County Emergency Communications Consortium in the form of the attached memorandum of understanding, and authorize the clerk and police chief to execute the memorandum. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
You want to acknowledge receipt first, Mr. Delorico, and then approve?
To acknowledge and to approve.
Okay, moved by Delorico to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Rice?
Yes.
Thank you. In the absence of the police chief, I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This has been a longer-term agreement that the City of Saline has entered into with what's the Project Oversight Committee, which is really a division of Washtenaw County that manages the 800 megahertz radio system, or the communication systems for public safety. So with that, we're asking basically for another 2-year renewal to take us forward another 2 years. The funding that is basically flows from Washtenaw County through the city, and then is actually mostly a pass-through to the Public Safety Management Group. Many people know Mr. Swenson, who manages that group. And so a majority of the funding is passed through for their management. They operate, obviously, the radio system here. They coordinate with all the departments in Washtenaw County for those communication systems, work with the local fire departments and EMS, as well as police. And then they also manage the boards, the Project Oversight Committee, as well as the Washtenaw County Communications Consortium. They manage those boards and manage their feedback and whatever updates to the system, et cetera, that may need to be made. So as part of this, the city would enter into an agreement with the County Project Oversight Committee. The total funding over a 2-year time frame would be $326,611. That is split between 2026 and 2027. And then again, we subsequently enter into a contract with the Public Safety Management Group. So I take any questions that council may have.
Any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you. So this is the money, we're agreeing right now, this is the money coming from the county to the city.
That's right.
Where is the agreement from the city to the entity?
I'll bring that forward at your next meeting on February 2nd.
And is it the same dollar amount? Is there additional costs to the city at that point?
So in discussions, that's one of the reasons they didn't bring them concurrently is there's small retainage by the city to manage contract, but a majority would go through to so roughly the same dollar amount would go through to the Public Safety Management Group.
There's no increase in cost to the city to maintain this agreement?
If you look at previous agreements, there's an inflationary escalator included in here. So this is a larger dollar amount than was previously approved for the previous 2-year period. Does that make sense?
Okay. Is there a reason that they weren't brought together, the two agreements?
Just want to make sure that this one was passed and adopted prior to entertaining the other, because without this funding, then obviously we don't have the funding to support the agreement with the Public Safety Management Group.
Okay. And this agreement is dated October 31st. When did it expire? Has it expired already?
So the agreement would be for the calendar year 2026 and 2027.
Okay. So then the contract, this current.
By the Project Oversight Committee with Washtenaw County.
Okay. Again, I'm going to ask that we get a better tickler system so that we're seeing these things before contracts expire. I think that's a bit of an issue. There's also a couple of typos in this that I hope that somebody would have picked up. Thank you.
If you want to send those typos, appreciate that catch to the city manager. We can get those corrected without objection. I would note, because it was a good suggestion, I would recommend in the future, city manager Swallow, that the motion that Councilmember Dillon made reference to, the subsequent motion, it just be A and B on the same agenda. I think that's just a better way to streamline the process. Additional questions or comments from the dais? Then we'll proceed to vote unless there's anything further. It's been properly moved by Del Orco, seconded by Rice to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 26-15, Northview Subdivision TAP Grant Design Engineering. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo and to approve or not to approve the professional service agreement from OHM in the amount of $37,200 for Northview Subdivision TAP Grant Design Services. Is there a motion, folks?
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Rice to acknowledge and approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Harmount. Engineer Humphries, the floor is yours.
Okay, this is just moving up a project in our capital plan or in our current budget because we got some TAP fund grant funding this fall. I'm going to start over. There's a big crowd here tonight, and I'm just going to focus on what I'm here tonight. And there's a bunch of people listening to me talk about road resurfacing projects. So this is capital road resurfacing project for Northview and County Estates, everything basically on the northwest corner of Waterworks and Ann Arbor Road. That's a project that's been in our capital plan for quite a few years now. We became engineering aware of an opportunity for some TAP grant funding in early October of this year. We had about a 1-month turnaround time. We were able to capture $285,000 through SEMCOG and transportation alternative programming that will allow us to do all of the ADA ramps. So we are proposing to do the ADA ramps in fiscal year 27 and come back and do the road service in 28. So basically this is giving like a $285,000 flush of funds into our road funding for the year. Ultimately, good news, we're moving around a little bit of funding in this current to the appropriate general ledger lines, but I guess open it up to questions beyond that.
Very good. There are questions for Engineer Humphries? Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you. I think this is great. I mean, this is what we did at Torwood, that we were able to do this. It looks like by your drawing, I think there's 11 spots and where they would do it. My big concern is, do they do them all at the same time? And I mean, because the issue is these are our ADA ramps, and making sure that there is still accessibility for those people, taking all of the ramps out at the same time. I want to make sure that we're providing some other mechanism for people to safely navigate our sidewalks.
So you're talking about during actual construction, looking at a sequence of constructions for ADA access during construction. That's absolutely something we can look toward. And this again is to authorize design just to get this going.
Right.
Any further questions? Mr. Greenbaum?
Just to clarify, and these are for existing handicap ramps that we're replacing. I know in Torwood there was something, or Saline River Drive, where a ramp was placed and shouldn't have been put in, so making sure that they validate. If you recall, they put one in and then they had to tear it out after it was installed.
Well, I think you're speaking maybe about a cross.
Something was,
ramp.
yeah.
These are all of the, so these are all of the ramps. You're talking about mid-block cross.
Yeah, we don't have any mid-blocks for this.
Yeah, and these are all, and the locations are shown on a map in the packet. They're all at the intersections where there are existing ramps, and there aren't, or existing, I guess I would call them curb cuts. There's not any of the ADA ramps and such. So if you go into except for the very, I think there is one that actually has ramps at maybe the intersection on the very northern end, but all the remaining intersections don't. They're just, some of them even have the big, wide.
Right.
So
This is just replacing what is no longer compliant.
Replacing that with 80, which will be something required before we do the road project anyway. So again, that's just some money that's helpful for our road funds.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Hulsh.
Just one really quick. Is this a source of funding that is sort of renewable beyond 2027? And then is this our first time being awarded these funds?
So the Transportation Alternative Planning Funds, we did receive also for US 12 West Sidewalk Project. So that project we applied for also fiscal year 27. This particular funding opportunity was that somehow the federally, state, whoever, much bigger government entity than us, there were extra funding available in fiscal year 26 and 27. They extended the funding to local agencies, road agencies, which we are, for 27 for very specific safety improvements. So that funding typically is for like non-motorized transit, bus routes, and that's why we got it for US 12 West Sidewalk, because that's a non-motorized transit. So that's why we applied for the ADA ramps, because that was a big chunk of money, big enough for us to justify the federal funding. It's something we could actually turn around relatively quickly, because Northview was already in our plan, so we knew the costs and the number of ramps, that and such. So yes, we have gone up. I personally, at least, am aware of 2 opportunities. I've now been here for 4 years, so those are 2 that are in the last 4 years.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further? There we have a motion on the floor moved by Rice, seconded by Harmount to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Engineer Humphries, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We move on to agenda item 25-16, Davenport-Curtiss home acquisition consideration. You have several motions to consider this evening, and the chair, of course, would be happy to entertain a modified motion in just a moment. However, I did not get an opportunity at the last meeting to ask some questions, so I'm going to ask a couple obligatory questions, primarily for the public's benefit, and I believe these would be directed to Deputy City Manager Cole, who's taken the lead on this project over the past 4 to 6 months. Deputy City Manager Cole, can you confirm what protections exist on the property today that would prevent the demolition of the home outbuilding or any significant modification to said buildings that would undermine or compromise their integrity?
Currently, right now, there are no protections over the building or the outbuildings.
Okay. And based on your research of the past 4 to 6 months, what have you determined to be the best way to go about putting those protections in place so that the home and structures can be preserved in perpetuity?
When we sit and review all the options that we have, the best opportunity for us as a city is to place those restrictions on there. As private citizens selling the home, it's much more difficult for those historic requirements to stay in place, especially around development.
Yeah. And this last question, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. If you don't want to answer, that's fine. But I think the council and the community would benefit from an answer. You've invested a lot of time and energy into this issue, which we appreciate, and you also probably have a better understanding of the history and the impact that family has had on the Saline community for many generations. If you were in our seat this evening, how would you proceed?
It is my opinion that it is best to protect and preserve not only the home itself, but also the opportunity for the 6 acres. In reviewing the risks associated with the property, I think that it is prudent to be temporary custodians of the property to preserve its historic nature and to have the 6 acre opportunity within our downtown.
Very good. I appreciate your candor. Again, we have some motions presented. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion from the floor? Mr. Gearbaugh, I'll yield to you because I think you have some modified language.
Yeah, based on the first motion that's in here written, I would move forward with to acknowledge receipt and approve the acquisition of the property located at 300 East Michigan Avenue, otherwise known as the Davenport-Curtiss House, for the agreed upon purchase price of $3 million. And authorize the city manager to take necessary actions to proceed to closing under the terms of the purchase agreement dated September 2nd, 2025, as amended December 3rd, 2025. And further, to direct the formation of a Davenport-Curtiss House working group to review and evaluate the use options for the property and to make a recommendation to City Council within 3 years to include a determination of ongoing ownership of the property by the city and a fiscally sustainable operational plan for the property if the city retains ownership. Furthermore, if appropriations or other funding is not available to maintain the property in its current state as of the city's acquisition, a corrective action plan, including the sale of the property, will be developed and submitted to the council for immediate action.
You want to read that addendum one last time? Because I know the deputy clerk's going to want to get that for the purposes of our minutes this evening. Please proceed.
Furthermore, if appropriations or other funding is not available to maintain the property in its current state as of the city's acquisition, a corrective action plan, including the sale of the property, will be developed and submitted to the council for immediate action.
The chair will declare that motion in order. Let me first defer to the assistant clerk. Are you clear on the additional language? You want to read it one more time?
Yes.
Okay, one more time, Mr. Gearbaugh.
I can pass this to you, too, if you have it.
Yeah, he's got good handwriting.
Well, sort of.
Yeah, better than mine. Everyone clear on the motion at the dais? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
You'll second, okay. Seconded by Dylan. Okay, so the motion is the bulk of option A with an additional sentence. We'll open up for questions or discussion, and because of the magnitude of this issue, I would appreciate, and we'll certainly allow everyone the opportunity to speak. I'll begin with the mover, Mr. Gearbaugh.
I would like to make it clear that the reason why I'm supporting this, and I've looked at other things, over our many, many years as I've been on council, our community, we've looked at investments and we've acquired land for different things. We've acquired land for our industrial parks to make that investment and resell it for the purpose of development and improving our tax base and diversification. We purchased property that was on Monroe Street and that turned that into housing. Part of that was parkland. We sold that land. This is an investment in the development and the consideration of a land and also the historic aspects of a property that, as we have heard, is something that has not changed in 150 years and is a key identity of our community. What we can do with this in an attempt to purchase it at this point in time is to protect it and is to put those things in place that will make this property foreseeable approach to which I believe, and I have seen it, and I have talked to many individuals in this community, that we want to see this protected. If we didn't want to do this, we wouldn't have historic districts on Ann Arbor Street or on South Ann Arbor Street or on Henry Street. A number of these things are no differently than when we're trying to preserve open space outside of the city. People step forward, sell their development rights. The purchase price that we're paying for this property does not reflect what the market would bear. And the property itself is more valuable than what we at this point in time are paying for it. If it was to be developed, and we could forego many taxes on this, but that's the same statement that we can make for all of our parks. At this point in time, if our goal was to generate tax revenue, we would not be maintaining parking lots, we would not be maintaining private buildings or public buildings, we would not be maintaining our parks. This is at some point, it's this community, if we want to be a city that's going to grow and protect for our future and for our children, the children that will be paying if we do not save this, because we will not have the open space and the protected the protected green space for them to use. I've grown up in this community 63 years, and I've seen this property, and every time I've heard somebody say, doesn't the city own it? No, we don't. Who's protected it? We can't protect it. We have never been able to put an HDC on this property. We've not been able to approach it because the owners at the time have not, didn't want us involved in their business. Well, at this point in time, we are now making that decision. We as leaders are purchasing this property to make that move forward. The reason why I put that additional motion on that, if we cannot as a city uphold and make the stewardship, then we will put it on the private market. We will sell it again, and that will be up to the private entity, but we will have protected the property.
Very good. Let me, if I may, and I'll read a statement, and then I welcome thoughts from my other 5 colleagues. To begin, let me thank city staff for their work and analysis on the potential acquisition of the Davenport-Curtiss property, specifically Deputy City Manager Elle Cole for her dedication and time these past 6 months or so, as we began initial evaluation on the appropriateness of purchasing said property. My colleagues and I also appreciate genuinely the feedback we received from area residents and business owners. Whether you were expressing support, opposition, or simply raising a question or concern, we thank each of you for reaching out to express your opinion. In addition to our regular council meetings, this matter was discussed in depth at 3 of my most recent coffee hours town halls in the latter half of 2025. Those dialogues and discussions were very advantageous. Some excellent ideas were shared and will undoubtedly be pursued further if council approves closing on the property. Now, let me say, I've heard the comments regarding the timing here, and I agree. The timing is far from perfect, but with all due respect, that's sort of beside the point. I found that no matter how hard you plan or prognosticate, some opportunities presented by external stakeholders will never be anticipated. Further, if you only act when the timing is ideal, you will undoubtedly forego countless opportunities. I'd rather lead a government which operates in the spirit of creativity and bold action than one frozen by timidity and indifference. To be very clear, great cities and communities are not simply defined by their geographic locations, exceptional schools, growing economies, or quality municipal services. They are also defined by their history and cultural assets. I have heard the voices and calls for redoubling our efforts and investing robustly in core services and infrastructure. I have also heard advocates plead for the preservation of our small-town identity, as well as the preservation of our unique cultural and historic assets. In my humble opinion, we can do both and must do both. Further, I know that there are many government and political types today, unfortunately in 2026, who would suggest compromise, middle ground, or common ground ought not to be pursued, that opinions have coarsened and bridging the divide is not worth the time or the effort. I emphatically disagree. Compromise and brokering common sense solutions are noble pursuits and must be done by those in leadership positions. In this vein, the proposal before us and the motion made by Councilmember Gearbaugh is a fair compromise and is both reasonable and pragmatic. It is not suggesting or advocating that we maintain ownership of the property in perpetuity. Rather, it is suggesting we become, at the very least, temporary stewards of one of the most prominent and important cultural assets in the Saline community. Further, if we assume ownership, we ought to give ourselves 3 years to evaluate and perform significant due diligence on the property to see if we can transform this one-of-a-kind home and parcel into an accessible, appealing public amenity for all to enjoy, ensuring as well that all of this is done in a responsible and sustainable manner. The financing and maintenance plan here is manageable and should not detract from the projects and initiatives already underway or scheduled in the ensuing years. In order to put this property on a sustainable trajectory, public-private partnerships and/or partnerships with existing or emerging nonprofits will need to be identified. At first blush, the amount of work that lies ahead seems daunting, but I'm optimistic, especially if private citizens step up to help lead this initiative in the ensuing months and years. I've lived in Saline my entire life, so too have my mother, grandparents, great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents. The people of our community, our identity, our culture, they matter to me. It's personal. Further, our history and iconic assets, they must be preserved. And we learned just earlier this evening that the absolute best way to preserve the Davenport-Curtiss property is for the city to close on the parcel and subsequently put in place the appropriate easements and/or legal protections in order to safeguard the home and outbuildings for generations to come. Tonight, we are called upon to take another step in this process. I am all in and will cast an emphatic vote in favor of closing on the Davenport-Curtiss property. Thank you. Additional comment from the dais. Councilmember Rice and then Councilmember Harmo.
When we were approached by the family in early fall of this past year, I remember having a conversation with the mayor where I said, I'm going to do anything I can to keep this property the way that it is, to preserve it, to ensure that it's the beacon of the city of Saline. Over the last 3 months, I do believe that we have done a decent job of assessing it as a homestead, assessing it as a residence, taking a look at the condition which the property is in. It's in great condition. The family has done an amazing, immaculate job. As a homeowner who lives in the historic district, who lives in a house that falls apart often, I'm very impressed by how they've been able to maintain this house. With that said, I do emphatically believe this is not the right time. As someone who has been personally affected by decisions at our federal and state levels, I still believe that the next few years of our lives are up in the air as far as finances go, as far as the availability of funding goes, as far as honestly any decision that a municipality can make could change at the whim of the current administration. Therefore, as a municipality, I think we need to look at responsibly making decisions that we can control, that we can pursue, and that we can be successful upon. The documents that have been provided, again, have shown that the status of the home is A+ status for a historic home. However, as a municipality, in turning it into an event space, I don't believe that we have really thought about or had the time. Honestly, we just haven't had the time to think about what the second and third order effects of taking on a project like this are. Do we have the staffing? Do we have the community input? Though I will vote no on this, I will put every effort behind me to make it successful. If we vote on this today and we purchase this mansion, you better believe that I'm going to be at these meetings, that I'm going to be talking to the community, and that I'm going to be finding a way to make this successful. Because I believe in it. I just don't believe it's the right time. Thank you.
Councilmember Harmo?
Is it true that a local historic landmark designation can be established onto a property even if the city's not the owner?
Question for staff.
With the permission of the Owner, yes.
Is that accurate? It's my understanding that it can be petitioned to be designated without the agreement of the owner, but the agreement of
Historic district?
the historic local landmark designation, not a historic district designation.
I'm not experienced with a landmark, but for a local historic district, it needs to have the approval of the owner.
Okay. I am going to also mirror what Councilmember Rice mentioned. It's not that I don't value the aesthetics of this building. You know, it is a landmark of our community. However, I also was elected to be fiscally responsible, and I just don't think that, I think that even a temporary ownership is a risky situation, both financially, and I'm not super, I know there's been a lot of concern about the lack of the concrete plan moving forward, you know, ahead of the actual vote. So for that, I will most likely be a no.
Councilmember Dillon, I'll go right down the dais. So we'll do Councilmember Dillon, Councilmember Delorco, and end with Councilmember Hulsh.
Thank you. A lot of what I was going to say have been said by others so far. I do want to touch on a couple of things because the one thing that has been said over and over is it's not a good time. In life, there's never a perfect time for anything. We probably would never have had children. We wouldn't have bought houses or cars or things like that because it's not the right time. Kept the job, whatever the case may be. What we have to look at is this is the moment in time that we are in. And when you wake up tomorrow and say, are we okay with not having that landmark in our community? Is that what you're okay with? That's the piece, because right now, if the city does not purchase it, there is absolutely nothing in our power to preserve that house and that property the way it is. So we need to think about that. We need to think about, and the mayor mentioned this, and it's something that I wholeheartedly believe in, which is public-private partnerships. It's something that we are working through with the green space downtown. It's things that we have worked through with a lot of other projects. And you see very successful models in other communities. We need to give ourselves the time to be able to find what the use of that property will be, what that private partnership will look like. And maybe we're not a piece of it. But we need to make sure that that property is maintained. That's the part that I feel the city has the obligation to right now. And then when we start talking about the financial aspects of it, after we're done with this, we're going to talk about another piece of property that the city owns, Lot 20, the empty lot next to Zippy's that we're about to close on. The city is going to be coming into approximately $650,000 with the sale of that property. This is why we have properties, and maybe those funds can be designated towards this. There's opportunities for things. When people say, oh, we're gonna have to forego things, every year that we do a budget, we have that same conversation. Sometimes there's different things. We just approved a very large contract for police apparatus, but we valued it, and that's where we chose to spend our money. And with that, that's where I think the city should spend its money with the purchase of this property.
Thank you, Councilmember Dillon. Councilmember Delorco, any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I've carefully listened to the public input and the comment this evening. There are a lot of comments made, more than I've heard in a long time, both for and against the acquisition and purchase of this property. In my view, if there were already deed restrictions placed on the property, we would not be having this conversation. I made a pledge to the electorate when I was running for re-election in this office that I would do everything in my capacity to assure that those deed restrictions would be put in place. With that, I also pledge that we would do so and we would maneuver the acquisition in such a way that it would not become a burden on the community and the taxpayers. We are not closing the door on the sale of the property. We are securing ownership long enough to put the appropriate historical protections and deed restrictions in place to prevent the home from being destroyed. And to contemplate the possibility of long-term ownership as a self-sustaining asset. I fully recognize that that is a lofty goal and a heavy lift that may or may not be possible. And it is only because we are putting the necessary guardrails and exit strategy in place that I can support the motion as amended. Were it not for that, I don't think I agree with the opposition that this would not be a wise move. However, I feel the loss of this historical asset would be a detriment and a travesty. The home has a value of historical and personal aspects that are greater than dollars and cents. And that's a value that can't be measured.
Thank you, Councilmember Delorco. Councilmember Hulsh.
Yeah, so I actually have a number of questions. Kind of just for me, more of the process and kind of getting to some of the specifics that have been mentioned in the packet around financing. And I hope you'll bear with me and hopefully there's some clarity for the public. So my first question is, can you explain what the timeline is between today and year 3 of acquisition of this property, being that I think year 3 has been identified as the sort of beginning of that off-ramp?
When you mean the financing?
Not necessarily the financing, but just, so my understanding is that if we purchase the home today, or we move forward with purchasing, that ultimately we have, I guess, up to 3 years to kind of iron out that plan. Is that an accurate assessment of, okay.
If I may, Councilmember Hulsh, if the motion that was moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon, is approved, my office, in conjunction with the city manager, would likely present at our next regular meeting the establishment of the mentioned working group. And if approved by council, then the clock would begin on that particular date, which would mean they would have to issue their final report no later than the 1st or 2nd of February 2029.
Okay, great. What is our contingency? I hear this mention of, you know, the value is I think 3 to 4 million. What is our contingency if in 3 years market conditions aren't favorable to the sale of the man? If we get to that third year and we say we got to sell, what happens? Yeah, if market conditions aren't favorable at that 3-year mark.
I think that we can pontificate many different scenarios. But the real value in that piece of property is the land.
Okay. I think the question still applies. So if at that 3 years, are we saying that, hey, the house isn't working, so we're going to look into selling the land? Like, do we have any sense of contingency should we get to that 3-year or even that 5-year mark? Because I think the off-ramp is 5 years total, correct?
It's 3. The original thought process was 5. We shortened it down to 3 to make it tighter and more succinct, and to deliver that guarantee of, you know, the stop loss on the gap. So with the home, I think what you're trying to say is what is the timeline? Maybe what is the total exposure?
Well, I know. So I understand the total exposure. I guess what I didn't see any mention to, and I understand again that we have to form this working group and those sorts of things. But again, have we considered, or did we make any considerations within within this plan that looks at contingencies?
Yes, we did. So the one thing that I would like to mention too is that the contingency actually is the remediation plan in 3 years. So I would love to be able to predict in the future the market conditions, what the task force decided to use the space for. Because those are not known, the 3-year time frame that calls for that contingency action plan, which includes the sale of the home, is your plan.
Okay, so let's say next our working group is decided and they go with Plan A. Who is responsible for assessing the performance of Plan A? And if we decide that we need to pivot at year 3, are we resetting our timeline, or do we need to come back with the new timeline for pivoting?
That is a decision for the elected body at that point in time. And I think it'd be pretty easy to assess whether it is a balanced budget or whether it's struggling, much like we assess every single department that we do on an annual basis. And those decisions will be for council.
Okay, so I think we've one of the things that I think has been a little bit perturbing to me, when we think about the cost of the acquisition, the true acquisition cost that we are signing up for today is more than the $3 million. What is that total cost that we would be committing to by year 3?
If you're looking at the debt service plus the maintenance, so that does not include the total $3 million because that is part of the debt service. So I'm just talking one number. That's about $330,000 to $335,000 a year. So that would be the potential risk. Now that does include some principal. So there is value in the home. So if we were selling that, that would be returned. So this is just a very loose estimate, but approximately between $330,000 and $335,000 annually.
So about $2 million, I guess, if I'm doing the math, over 3 years.
3 years would be less than $1 million.
Right, sorry, just over $1 million. Added a zero there. Okay, so then what, I know with the amended motion that we want to, we need to have a corrective plan. How does that corrective plan occur in alignment with this sort of 3-year off ramp, or is that something that's going to be before this 3-year? I guess I don't understand.
Concurrent.
Yeah. Okay. Concurrent. So those are all kind of my financial questions, and so what I want to move now kind of into is the process. Actually, no. Before I go, how do we know how much tax revenue and or investment revenue we're foregoing in those first 3 years?
The current amount of tax revenue that the property is $17,000 a year. Barring any added tax value that the city puts on it or development, that would be the amount. But the task force could decide to do a plethora of different things that could potentially bring in tax revenue as well.
What about the investment revenue? Because I know we're making a pretty decent amount on our investments and from our general fund now. Do we have a number on what that would look like that we'd be foregoing?
Generally, the real estate market tends to fall in line with the investment market. And in fact, we invest in real estate in our investment portfolio. So this is, albeit in our neighborhood and we're investing in ourselves, just a little bit type of difference in that investment, but it should return about at the same rate.
Yeah, I totally understand. Is there a specific number that we have on that?
Are you asking me to predict?
Yeah, not necessarily predict, but if let's say we have a 4% return for over these next 3 years, do we have an idea of kind of what we would be foregoing on that $3 million in our general fund?
As far as our investment returns, yes. Yep.
Okay.
So,
and do we have that number?
So the percentage rate that we will be earning it's about 4 to 5, and I would say it would be about the same rate of return that we'll get on the increase of the value in the home.
Okay. The process, one of the things that I heard about this process, and one of the things that I think I've seen throughout this process that really, really disturbed me, I know that the mayor just mentioned coffee houses, but I don't recall that any of those coffee hours were specifically comment periods, listening sessions, or anything specifically related to the mansion. And so one of the main things that I ran on was the concept that we govern together. Clearly, as this room is shown, by my count, I think there were about 11 pro-purchase and about 17 no purchase with 3 neutrals. It seems to me that there were a number of opportunities that I think both the city staff and also council, especially once it was public in September, to open up the due diligence to the public. When we think about that 90-day period, I think the most important due diligence that we missed were the citizens of Saline. So my question is, what were the barriers the council and city staff faced to soliciting citizen input, and how can we overcome those barriers to ensure that citizen input is solicited at the earliest possible decision point?
Absolutely. I believe the first barrier is the negotiation of the sale of the property itself. So a real estate deal is a little bit different than a traditional municipal operation or deal. So you want to not kind of play your cards out in front of everyone when you're negotiating. So that's the first thing that slows down the process. The second part that slows down the process is doing the due diligence, which might seem, oh, we did a couple inspections and it might seem easy. It's not. We went through so many different inspections, and it is extremely time consuming. And then when you kind of realize and step back and you think about the involvement of the community, we don't have time to stop and go to the community and see what they believe to be the highest best use for the property. And that is exactly the intent of the Rec Center work group, so that they do have a say. And the say may be, we don't want to keep it, we want you to put the restrictions on it, and we want it turned around and off of the city's books.
So I guess, again, my question there is, even if you think about this working group, that's going to be something that's ultimately selected by the mayor. So that is ultimately going to reflect who the mayor sees fit as, being in that working group. Do you still think that that's enough to ensure citizen input? Because I understand the negotiations, and I understand that, there is a time sensitivity to this. But I also want to point out that sort of in the same sort of time span, Saline Township citizens have more input on the data center than we as a city have had on this mansion. And I know we can't always do surveys. I know we can't always solicit, every single citizen's input. But I have to believe that between September and January 12th, that there were opportunities that we could have taken, and I wasn't on council then, but I still feel as though there were opportunities that could have been taken to directly solicit the public's input on the purchase of this mansion. And so I would ask, what were the specific reasons? Well, no, never mind. I don't need to ask that question. My next question, we've mentioned that the public-private partnership seems to be what everyone is calling for, or kind of seems to be the next best alternative to outright purchasing. Let's say we move forward with a public-private partnership. Does that partner also have governance on how and what can be developed on that land?
That is a technicality of a contract and agreement that the city would make with the potential partner.
Okay. And then I guess, I don't know if there's any representatives from the family here, but during the negotiations, were we made aware of any considerations that the family could potentially or had made in preserving the house? Because I kind of feel like they've known it's historic. It wasn't historic, just when they came to us to buy it. So it kind of, as people have pointed out, I think there is some responsibility that the family could take in preserving this property, because to me, it kind of seems they aren't really worried about it being protected. And, the onus is being put on the city and ultimately the taxpayers to do that protection. So were there any considerations during the negotiations to protect the property?
Absolutely. In fact, the family's consideration to offer the property to the city of Saline was with the forefront in their mind of protecting the property. If the property were sold via private sale, because it sits on a 6-acre block that is completely undeveloped, if they were to make the sale, even with restrictions to kind of mark off any development. If the person who purchased the property were to turn around and start to develop it, it would be the responsibility of the family to then try to fight that. And it would be a very difficult fight. Where if we're able to put those restrictions on and, have everything be preserved from a legal standpoint, that's not going to be as difficult in the long run if there's another change of hands.
Okay. Awesome. And again, bear with me. I really have had a lot of questions. I know we didn't have a lot of time at the working meeting. So then, speaking of I know that sort of the funding mechanism that we've discussed with this proposal is we intend to ultimately issue a bond to kind of replenish that fund balance. That'll leave us, about 1.8 million. So what is the timeline to which we will have that bond, have that general fund replenished? So once we issued a bond, at what point, I guess, can we expect it to be back where our charter calls for?
It doesn't take very long at all. So once the bond is issued, it normally is about 30 to 60 days.
Okay, awesome. Another question. How often has the city used Wellers for public events or for just events?
During my tenure as a council member or mayor, I believe we have reached out to the proprietor on a few occasions, and I recall on at least one instance, maybe two, using the Henry Ford room for a gathering space for a regional meeting with West Side businesses.
So is there any concern of potentially cannibalizing sort of both the historic nature of Wellers, but also Wellers as a venue space and event space?
Not in my judgment, but if council were to move forward with the motion that was presented this evening, and we follow up at our subsequent meeting with a proposal to establish a working group, I would cite a number of things within that memo, including that whatever opportunities are pursued on the site of the Davenport-Curtiss property, that we try our very best not to cannibalize or detract from existing businesses or nonprofits in the Saline community. I would also note to an earlier question or an inquiry that you made to the deputy city manager that there's nothing in the sales agreement that precludes us from subdividing the existing property, moving in a new direction, and selling portions of the lot if we deemed that appropriate.
So, okay. So I think that those are all my questions. And I appreciate, first of all the work that you've done, both City Manager Swallow and Deputy City Manager Cole. And as I think about this mansion and I think about this purchase, I visited the home, and as someone who is a book lover, I wish I could have that library for myself. I am a huge history buff. I completely recognize the historical value. If I had the money myself, I would pay for it. My problem, and the reason why I am voting no, is for me, it goes back to that principle of together. We have to remember, even as we sit here as elected officials, when we think about the org chart for this city, citizens sit at the top. Before council, before the mayor, before anything, our citizens sit at the top. And I ran on the promise, and I will continue to govern on the promise that every decision that we make, that we can, I want to hear the input of the citizens, the input of the people who are paying our bills. And so I hope that as we move forward, not just with this purchase, as we move forward with the rec center, as we move forward with the dam, as we move forward with the wastewater treatment plant, that we remember that the most important due diligence that we will ever do for any project in this city rests in its people. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I do want to confirm or go back to an earlier point that was raised, and Deputy City Manager Cole, you can confirm this. The last coffee hour that we hosted here in Council Chambers with Commissioner Beeman, the main thrust of that presentation was on the Curtiss Mansion. That was advertised via press release and on social media. Do you want to talk? I believe you took, I don't mean this in a pejorative way, nearly 45 minutes discussing the due diligence and the evaluation on the Curtiss property.
Yes, we spent about 45 minutes at the coffee hour that morning with the Curtiss Mansion as the main topic. It was a very good session, and there was a lot of input, both pro and negative. I thought it was a very useful conversation for about 45 minutes to an hour.
Very good. Let me just say this, and then I'll entertain any final comments before we vote. And I made a few of these remarks last week in a live stream interview with Mr. Tran Longmore, the proprietor of the Saline Post. I hear the concerns, and I agree with many of the thoughts that have been articulated this evening and in the preceding weeks. I don't know if we were going to be able to make this work, but I can tell you from my perspective, I would rather make a good faith effort and try and fail than forego this opportunity and see the asset lost in the ensuing years. So I'm willing to like I said, step forward and support a motion to acquire the property, to become temporary stewards or custodians, and put in the time and effort to see if we can turn this into a valuable, viable community asset for all of our residents to enjoy. I do want to jump back to a comment that was made by Mayor Pro Tem Rice, which one of the things that makes the Saline community exceptional is that we fight hard when the stakes are high, and we close ranks when a decision and when consensus is reached. So if there is a vote, and there will be in just a moment, and the vote is in the affirmative to purchase the Curtiss Mansion, I'm hoping that everyone will do their part to try and make this a successful process, to do a thorough due diligence, and again, to try and turn this into a valuable amenity that all of our people can enjoy and that will enrich our community's quality of life. With that, are there any additional comments before we vote? Everyone clear on the motion? Deputy Clerk Alexa, Alexa, are you clear on the motion? Okay. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge and to approve, noting modified language at the end of the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries 4-3. Excuse me. Motion passes. We will proceed to the final business item tonight, which is 26-17, resolution confirming the sale of 1080 East Michigan Avenue and designating authorized signatures. This is a motion to acknowledge receipt and to approve or not to approve resolution number 2026-17, authorizing the delivery and execution of such closing documents and legal instruments on behalf of the city to consummate the sale of 1080 East Michigan Avenue, including the memorandum of real estate purchase development agreement that stipulates the city shall have the right to repurchase the property should the purchaser fail to satisfy its obligations.
I'll move to approve with adding the value of the final sale.
You want to first move to acknowledge to approve, and then for the public's benefit, Mr. Gearboss, please state that number.
I believe it's, could you clarify it? I don't have it in front of me right now.
15? Is that the number you're looking, the purchase price?
Yep.
The purchase price.
615 for a purchase price of $615,000. You clear on that, Clerk Alexa? Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dillon. Everyone clear on that motion? Okay. Who would like to begin? City Manager or Community Development Director?
I can start.
Please.
First of all, thank you for Mayor and Council for considering this. I know it's an addition to the agenda. However, the developer has indicated that they would like to close on the property in January, so that's why it's bringing forward to you today. Obviously, it was previously considered by Council at the end of 2024 with approving the purchase agreement for as the noted amount of $615,000 in again, October of 2024. So this is a request from the title company to clarify the city's authorization for the sale of the property, as well as designate the signatories to that for the deed and the other documentation that's required for consummation of the sale. So I appreciate they going forward and take any questions you may have.
And as noted in my State of the City address last week, for the public's benefit, the preliminary site plan approval for 1080 East Michigan Ave will be considered by the Planning Commission this Wednesday at 7 p.m. here in Council Chambers. So if you're interested in reviewing the project or providing comment, we welcome you to attend that meeting. Mr. Gearboss, did you have a comment or question?
Just as I expressed it, I think when we got this comment sent to us in email, my concern again is making sure, as Mr. Akin has been looking at it, is the preliminary report and making sure that this development moves forward in a timely manner. It seems like we've had some delays, and I know we have our deadlines and things in here, that we properly manage and track those to make sure that we don't lose out on any potential repurchase or whatever. It seems like this property has taken more than a decade to try and develop, and every time we have something, it seems to basically kind of fall back. So I'm hoping that some of the indications that we've seen, because we were supposed to have a preliminary review at Wednesday's meeting, but that's not going to happen. It's just going to be a discussion. I'm hoping that this developer is doing its due diligence so that we do, by signing on this and selling it, that the development will get this on the tax rolls as soon as possible.
And as part of that, obviously, we did enter, they have agreed to enter into the real estate purchase and development agreement that sets those timeframes. So yes, we'll track those closely. Obviously, within 90 days, they have to start construction. Then within the 30 months, they have to, or excuse me, within 9 months, they have to start construction. Within 30 months, they have to have the certificate of occupancy for the development.
Can you clarify, since we're looking at this preliminary, are there any concerns with you in terms of that, Mr. Aiken, that this contract currently doesn't have to make sure that those due diligence and things occur?
The due diligence has been done on the property. As far as the site planning, I have been working with them quite a bit to get it tuned in. The reason why it's not going to Planning Commission this Wednesday is I wasn't comfortable putting it in front of Planning Commission knowing that it would get postponed because there was it was lacking some information. It's kind of it's a tricky site because of the SPA 1 with commercial, then some residential, and you throw the declaration of restrictions for Sauk Trail Business Park on there. So there's a lot happening in there. And, so I just didn't want anything to go in front of the Planning Commission that I wasn't confident in at this point.
Just to be clear, it's being considered by the Planning Commission as a discussion item, just not voted on.
As a discussion item, just basically to go over some of the finer points as to why it didn't make it this time.
Do you think it could be considered at their meeting in February?
We are pushing to hopefully get it on, have the January 28th earmarked. We're going to see if we can get one for them because they want to get moving on working on the ground at some point here soon.
Just that's my concern of that. I don't think that's going to be enough time, actually, based on what you were showing me, that they could respond back with appropriate.
It all depends on what their architect can get back to me within the next couple of weeks. Things that I see on there that are insignificant to a preliminary site plan, it can easily show on a final site plan. I'm not going to be concerned with setbacks, building height, things of that nature. Could, in the parking count, could change the size of the detention area and then really change the shape of the layout. So I didn't want them to have to come back and do that again.
Which is fine. I just want to make sure that once we get to that point, there isn't anything that's going to, in this contract, potentially jeopardize our position as a city to make sure that. Thank you.
Additional questions, Councilmember Dillon and then Mayor Pro Tem Rice.
Thank you. So I feel like we haven't done this before. Doesn't the contract specifically state that you have the authority to sign agreements, City Manager?
The purchase agreement didn't specifically state that. Now, under the charter, there is authorization for the mayor and clerk to execute agreements, but the title company had specifically requested a resolution from council to confirm that and that who the signatories would be.
That seems odd. That seems like it would have been one of our standard contracts that legal would have developed. So I'm just a little surprised. Going into the resolution, though, I just do have a couple, because there is a whereas clause that is showing that in 2 days you are closing on this property. So are you closing prior to site plan approval? Because that's the date that's showing in here.
Yeah, the site plan approval was not part of the original development agreement. That was strictly for due diligence.
Okay. So they are purchasing the property in 2 days?
That is their proposed closing date, yes.
Okay. And if that should not happen, what is our recourse?
This is the anticipated closing date, so the resolution would still stand, even though obviously this is just a projected closing date.
Right. And so I guess I just want to understand. Let me step back a second. Is one of the things that I don't see here when we talk about economic impact are the 2 extension period financial obligations that they were due to pay. Have each of those $10,000 payments been made?
The first extension, I believe, was paid. I don't know. That was late fall.
Okay.
And then the second one, I think that expired at the end of December. So, and then with the holidays, we just kind of pushed it off because of the closing date.
And so they have not paid the second $10,000 extension. And there's no obligation for them to do that, even though it was in the contract?
I didn't see the obligation since they were closing.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I understand if it's a very close window of a couple of weeks, I see that. But what I want to make sure is that now they haven't paid the second due diligence and that this date keeps rolling out.
Yeah, they did pay the $10,000, but there's also that $25,000 that they put up at the beginning of the contract also.
Right, but they've had 2 due diligence extensions, which should have been $10,000 each, correct? And so, I guess what I just want to make sure that we're getting that. And then we have some money less, our net is less than obviously the proceeds. What are our closing costs for?
So I think there are some potential costs for, just the title insurance, et cetera, but I don't.
Because it's showing here impact 615 gross proceeds estimated at approximately 590 net at closing costs. So, I mean, that's 25,000 in closing costs.
We haven't seen the final statement from the title company.
Okay.
So the 25, the initial 25 would be taken off of that, and then the other 10.
The initial 25 that they put down as the deposit, is that,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, so there's those reductions.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for that clarification.
So the mayor had to step out for a moment, but I did have a comment and a couple of questions. I'm going to go back to when we first saw a preliminary site plan of this development. I believe we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here. I think the density is way off for this area, and I'm going to stick by it because I don't feel like there was any adjustments made by the developer here. I think that this is area that's prime for higher density. We are talking about a walkable shopping retail area primed for high density. And if we want to encourage additional diversity in housing in the city, if we want to encourage additional taxpayers in the city, these small homes that we're packing into this small area, I don't think are it. Now, with that said, this image that we have here, is this what they're still working toward? Is this still what their site plan looks like?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
What about the density of it? Is the density still the same?
There are going to be a total of 36 units. Now, going back to what I said about the declaration of covenants for the Sauk Trail, buildings are not permitted to be over 30 feet tall. And then when you have multi-unit buildings, there's a restriction, a limit how close they can be, front to back, side to side, side to front, all that stuff. So they've done their best. And then with the detention that they have to add on to it, that takes up quite a bit of area in the back there. So
Those restrictions that you mentioned are restrictions that we've put into place in our own planning ordinances,
the
though.
Sauk Trail business declaration.
So the planning, they are stuck with how many units they can currently fit in there. They couldn't go higher.
Density can be up to, for three units or more per building, 11 units per acre. And I believe, give me a second here. They are, one is 4.8 units per acre, and the other is 3.76 units per acre.
And what's the total on that? You have that offhand?
I'm sorry.
What would be the total of the acreage that they have then? Or total density for the area that they have?
Total area of the entire development is 6.54 acres. That includes the commercial, and then once
So I guess, my point here is not that I'm going to vote no to this, because I still think that this is a valuable piece of land, and I think that the city is doing a great job of bringing in some income here. But I do think that we, as a city and as a planning commission, we really need to think about what we want things to be, right? Like, what do we want that area to be? Do we want it to be these single home condo things? Maybe we do. But when I picture a retail area, I picture multi-use. I picture retail incorporated in with housing and, housing above retail, things like that. And in my mind, this leans more toward the benefit of the developer than it does the benefit of what we're trying to accomplish in the city of Saline with increasing our housing and increasing our tax base. So I just wanted to put that out there. Again, it's not that I'm going to vote no for this because I think it's a good sale. I just wish we could encourage developers and somehow incentivize them to be a little bit more creative with creating higher densities.
Any additional comments or questions from the dais? Any additional discussion? Okay, it's been properly moved by, is it Gearbaugh the mover and Dylan the second? Okay, handwriting sloppy, excuse me. To acknowledge, to approve, and of course note the sale price. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. On to reports and other announcements, including updates from boards, committees, commissions, and task forces. I'm going to start to my left and end to my right. Councilmember Harmount, any comments this evening?
Yeah, we had our Historic District Commission meeting last night. We had a couple properties brought up to review and approved. And then on Wednesday, we have the Environmental Commission meeting on the 21st, which is not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Rice.
I want to nothing from council, from commissions or boards. We meet next week, but I want to read a quick statement to our Acting Deputy City Manager, Ms. Cole. I want to acknowledge the City of Chelsea's decision to make an offer to Elle Cole to serve as its next city manager. During her tenure in Saline, especially over the last several months, Elle has made meaningful and lasting impact in our community. Her leadership during the challenges facing Thorncrest residents demonstrated her ability to act quickly, bring partners together, and center compassion in local government. From helping mobilize support for residents facing sudden eviction to working with community partners to establish the Thorncrest Residents Assistance Fund, Elle played a critical role in ensuring our community responded with care, coordination, and urgency. Those same skills will serve the City of Chelsea well. Elle has a proven ability to bring people together around shared goals, navigate complex situations, and turn collaboration into action. Her strengths in community engagement and problem solving will be a real asset as Chelsea continues to move forward. From day one, Elle and I have been in constant communication and working collaboratively to move the city of Saline forward. We've always been open with one another, and any issues or challenges from the past are exactly that. They're in the past. Any conversations related to my decision to not personally recommend Elle for Saline's position occurred long ago, under high tension and emotions. It is important that we remain focused on the future. Saline has many important projects ahead, and we are in good hands with capable staff who continue to lead the city in a positive direction. Elle, I wish nothing but the best for you, and I hope your contract negotiations go well.
Thank you very much for those kind words. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaugh, any reports, announcements, or updates from boards, committees, commissions, or task forces?
Yes, Mayor, a few of them. Fire Board met this past week to discuss the Fire Authority. Moving forward on that, we're looking at the Articles of Incorporation. A number of changes have been made that. As you know, the city manager has sent out a draft of that. We'll be reviewing that, I believe, at a work session, the first meeting in February.
And that'd be up to council if you feel a work session is necessary. I'd put forward that in my Friday communications as to, please let me know, and we can schedule that.
Let's stay on that point just for a moment. I would defer to our reps on the fire board, Councilmember Delorco and Councilmember Gearbaugh. You think a work session would be advantageous?
And Ms. Champion.
Well, of course, she's not present, but yeah.
But I believe so. I think most of the issues in there are pretty straightforward, but if there's any concerns or issues, we want to try and turn this around fairly quickly because they want to make sure that should this be moving forward for millage and so forth, that's going to get onto the ballot appropriately in the time period.
How about you, Mr. Delorco?
I agree. They're looking for input from the municipalities, and this is a time-sensitive issue, so we need to move forward quickly.
How about 6 p.m. on the 2nd of February? Does that work for everybody?
That's our regular meeting, so.
Yep. Next meeting, 6 p.m. Come an hour early. All right, good. Please continue, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Right, asset management met this past Friday. We were focusing on the GIS and the dashboard moving forward, a number of the information and getting that populated, so that information will be available. Also, to bring in, I think we mentioned that there's looking at some of the repairs for the dam, and just recently the issue related to the mill race is trying to figure out how to address that in terms of potentially either repairing it or addressing how to fix the stop logs or whatever related to that. So more issues will be coming on that. And then also risk management met this week. City Manager Swallow has managed to bring forward and reduce down to about the number 7 or 8 clear issues that we feel that are going to be straightforward to deal with risk management, and looking forward on that, bringing that forward to council. As you know, we've had a number of them, but there's some core ones that he feels are clear that we would look towards resolving and working towards into also our strategic plan.
Thank you. Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you. The Cable Commission is meeting tomorrow, and we're hoping for some very positive information. We had crews out there digging last week at the mill race, and, excuse me, not at the mill race, at the middle school to repair the fiber line. So we're hoping that we'll have those repairs all done and have the access channel up and running very quickly. Mr. Gearbaugh did talk about asset management. Also, another aspect of that is I think that we will be bringing some aspects forward just to make sure that all of council understands what's happening as far as some future planning, and the way in which decision-making is being made on the backside. And it's very much decision-based, and so understanding that aspect of it. And urban planning meets, excuse me, it's been a very long, Urban County meets this week, and we will continue. We are still working through our process of fund allocation to all the participating municipalities and how that's going to work. The only comment outside of committee reports I'd like to make is that there was discussion about the truck traffic, and I just wanted to, for public edification, that kind of came up. It came up on social media, it came up here. We've had some internal conversations, and so I don't want to put the city manager on the spot now, but maybe at our next meeting, either Mr. Swallow or Chief Razik can kind of talk about what we're trying to do to mitigate some of the truck traffic and things like that moving forward.
We're definitely taking a close look at enforcement, particularly on US 12 or Michigan Avenue. We believe that, some of this is obviously related to major construction project in a nearby community, as well as evaluating, we had some previous studies done and legal opinions on weight limits for our local streets, and so taking a closer look at those and what the police department may need for further enforcement and training in terms of the officers as well as our scales that we would utilize.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. DeLorca?
Thank you. I attended the same board meetings as Councilmember Gearbaugh on the fire board and Councilmember Gearbaugh and Dillon on the asset management team. I think they adequately covered everything that was discussed, so I don't have anything substantive to add.
Dr. Helsch?
Yes. So I met actually this past Friday with Parks and Rec and also Youth Council Staff Liaison Lambert to get up to speed on Youth Council, which we meet, I think, next week, the 20th. I also introduced and got up to speed for our Arts and Culture Committee meeting this coming Thursday. I think we actually, just last week, sort of created the subcommittee for Jazz in the Park. So really excited to get started planning with that. And then I also, outside of comments, I have to echo Nicole. I don't think I would be sitting here if it weren't for you, Elle. And I just want to say that as a friend and as a professional, thank you for seeing something in me that I didn't see. And I promise I'm going to try not to cry. Thank you for truly seeing something, not just in me, but also in this city It is so undeniable how much you care, and not just for this city and the city staff, but also for the people of this city. I thank you for tirelessly making people that aren't always seen in this city feel safe and seen. And I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to cry in front of everybody, but I will be in Chelsea because I love Chelsea burger. So you haven't gotten rid of me yet, but I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anything else to be brought before council tonight before we move into public comment? No? Well, then, under the Open Meetings Act, any person may now come forward to make a comment to City Council. This public comment period will be listed to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak are requested but not required to state their name and their address for the record. Please note, Council will not answer questions during the public comment session. You may begin, Ms. Armbruster.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Armbruster, 205 Circle Court. I guess I'm curious that I can't sell my property because I can't sell my house because of the sewage treatment plant. It's actually just a few feet from my property line. I'm sad that that was done to my property because now I can't sell it. Who wants to buy my house on the banks of the sewage treatment dump? Nobody wants it. I've had people come and look, nobody wants it. So I'm stuck. Sadly, I'm stuck. I pay high taxes for property that won't sell, that can't sell. Nobody wants it. Again, a few feet from my property line. I used to have beautiful gardens. Of course, now I can't do a lot of that stuff. And I also have left so many messages for the mayor, who I don't know where he went, but so many messages I have left for him on his voicemail, and he has never returned my calls, not once. I even asked him once if the city would like to buy my house, since nobody else does. No return phone call. Has he blocked all my messages? Does he have me blocked? I'm apparently thinking that's what's going on. And I've been told that that is against the law to block my messages. Yes, I have retained counsel. And the other thing I don't understand is why there is alcohol in the mayor's office and why he has served it to someone who told me about it and who said it tasted good. Why? Is the mayor got alcohol in his office on the city hall property? I would trust that's against the law too. I didn't vote for a lot of things, but a lot of things have been dumped on me anyway. I'd like you to come to my house anytime you'd like to. 205 Circle Court. Come and take a look. I can see people through my patio door walking around.
Thank you, Ms. Armbruster. We will have the city manager return a phone call for you so you can properly file what you need to with the city.
Yeah, well, why is there alcohol being allowed on the premises? That's what I'd like to know.
You've had your time today. We appreciate you coming here, and we will get back to you. Do we have any further public comments?
Yeah.
Assistant City Clerk, did we have any additional public comments that they wanted to be read? No? Well, then with that, I would accept a motion to move to adjourn at 9:37 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh. Do I have a second? Second by Harmont. then we are adjourned. City Council is adjourned at 9:38 p.m.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We'll have the thingy.